So today we feel like reviewing Flatliners.
And Rain and Blood by Dark Horse Brewing. It's gonna get bloody.
Where am I?
Good question.
Today's a good day to die.
So the movie begins with the Baconator himself.
Kevin Bacon!
He's a medical student and he has to make a split executive decision on whether or not to operate on this woman because there's no doctor in sight.
It's a hospital, why would there be?
Meanwhile, Kiefer Sutherland
The Keith Man!
is hatching up a plan to discover what's behind the veil of death.
He gonna do it.
He's recruiting his fellow classmates, the best and maybe not quite the brightest, to basically kill him and then resuscitate him from the dead.
So they finally succeeded in bringing Kiefer back from the dead. And they are super duper excited about it. They are ecstatic. And now all of them want to undergo the same procedure to see what is it really like to be brought back from the dead.
They start like a bidding war. They each give an amount of time that they're willing to
Be under
dead.
for.
While they're competing, they're inside a mini mart, and Kiefer, the Keef man, is sitting out in the truck, and he starts seeing these weird visions.
Just like traumatic imagery that pops in his mind, and he becomes a little concerned about it.
And you're
but-
not sure, like, maybe he has some brain damage.
Right, I mean, you died, so that could very well be what happened. So Baldwin wins the bidding war and is the next to go under.
So Baldwin's kind of this skeevy dude.
Yeah.
I actually don't think we talked about yet how
He sleeps around a lot.
He's engaged, but he has this shitty idea that he needs to sleep with as many people before he's technically married.
Get it
Just
all
to-
done out
just
of the
to
way.
get it all out of his system. But
Well, what's really messed up about it is he videotapes them with his camcorder without them knowing about it even, and he keeps a collection of
he's
his
got,
his
like, a little
erotic.
library.
Right, exactly. He keeps all of them on film, and he describes his visions of the afterlife.
So it starts off, you see his birth, basically. He's going out of this tunnel, and you see his mother caring for him, and maybe like early childhood friends, and
And
then
older
you start
women.
seeing the more sexual side, where it's when he starts having relations, and you see like this overlay, like constantly of just hands.
Yeah, a
That
lot
are,
of
like,
hands.
kind of grabbing out. It's kind of like an artsy picture, like.
Yeah, I mean, when I watched it, I thought it was corny as shit. It's like, okay, I mean, like, I get it. This doesn't need to go on for 3 minutes. I get what's happening.
Is that why you asked me to leave the room?
Yes.
The Keef man
Keith Man!
in the real world is starting to get a little unhinged. He's kind of losing focus. And
He's clearly distracted by something,
Yeah.
and as a doctor or any medical professional, you really can't be distracted, especially when someone is literally dead and needs to be brought back.
But no thanks to him, William Baldwin is brought back to life.
And he's just fine.
He's dead and he gets laid.
After this, Kiefer keeps seeing his visions of, now it's like a little kid
Yeah.
who actually kicks the crap out of him.
Yeah. His initial visions when he was dead were beautiful imagery, but now he's having dark, realistic visions which interrupt his day-to-day life of this child who is beating the snot out of him.
And he chooses not to tell anybody about it. Instead, you see him suturing up his wounds.
Yeah, and he just explains,
making
oh,
excuses.
I got in a fight with a bunch of big dudes. I was in a hockey accident, whatever. He's not the only one. Mr. Baldwin himself starts having visions after his going under being a dead man person thing. He periodically sees television screens or monitors, and instead of what they're supposed to be projecting, he sees images of the women who he's videotaped. And it's,
asking him, why'd you do this?
why'd you do this? I trusted you.
You
You told me you loved me.
you know.
Things like that. And it gets to him because it's obviously not really supposed to happen, but it very much plays into his guilt about how he feels about all that.
And it's Bacon's turn to die. And he's a very important part because he happens to be the only atheist in the group.
He is not expecting to see anything.
And while he's under, we see Baldwin come in a little bit frazzled from his recent experiences.
Yep. And whereas in previous experiments, Kevin Bacon, who is a medical genius, has been able to resuscitate people from the dead, he's the one under, so they don't have that expertise. So the experiment starts to go awry, and they're having trouble bringing him back.
And the Keith man starts really losing it.
Let me say we give him another 5 seconds. What? 10. Why not 10? We got a little time to decide. Are you serious?
I trusted you, Joe.
So Bacon has been under for 3 minutes and 50 seconds, which is the longest time for anyone in the crew, and probably that they're aware of anyone being dead and being brought back to life. And he experiences visions, but won't really admit it to the group. He says
he's
it's probably a
weary.
chemical or
Yeah.
something, or electro pulses going through the mind. And
But he can't deny that he did have visions and he was technically brain dead.
yes. So something's out there.
I'm going again.
No way, Nelson. I've been bumped twice.
Bidding starts at 4 minutes.
Julia Roberts has won the bidding war, and she is going to go under for the longest time known to humankind or any sort of medical history, and hopefully be resuscitated. And Kevin Bacon is having visions and
He's
realizes
like, there's some bad side effects to
there's
this.
some bad juju going on. So he busts in the experiment and says, all right, we're going to cut this short, bring her back now.
The Keith man doesn't want to because this is his project.
my life.
But everybody else is on board with Bacon.
Right.
He's really the leader of the group.
Right.
And they try to pull her out of it, but they're in this building, this leaky building, and it shorts out a circuit.
Right, yeah, it's raining and a whole bunch of water is leaking into the building. And if I could just make a quick point here, they're medical students.
They're
they
bad
have to
medical
know
students.
about like cleanliness to a certain degree. They're doing all these experiments in a gross, run-down, disgusting building with leaky roofs, and so it starts raining and water drips on the electronics, and it shorts out the those things called?
The electric pads.
Yeah.
The Baconator tells them all, like, look, I saw this girl that I used to pick on, you know, the same age that she was back then, now on a subway train, and there's something wrong with this.
Right.
So
He's aware enough to realize that this is not just a vision. This has to be a side effect of something, probably me dying.
And Baldwin comes out and he says, yeah, I've been having this strange stuff go on too, and it's been bugging me. I thought I might have just been a little bit screwy in the head. And they ask Kiefer, like, who's been after you?
And he says,
I think his name's Billy Mahoney. He's an 8-year-old kid we used to pick on in school. It's no big deal.
Bacon decides something needs to be done, so he comes up with this idea of atonement.
right.
And
Clearly, this is guilt-based. We have hurt these people in the past. Maybe if we help them or say we're sorry, then they won't haunt us anymore, and we can get beyond that.
he tries to find the little girl that he's wronged, Winnie Hicks, and he travels out to her house
Tracks
and
her down.
brings along Kiefer.
Yep. She forgives him, and the way the whole scene is played out is very, very well done.
Yeah,
it
you can
seems
see-
legitimate.
It actually made a difference.
Right. But meanwhile, while this is all going on, Kiefer is in the truck which they drove out to meet Winnie, and he starts having more visions of Billy Mahoney. It's pretty brutal. Bacon rushes out and just sees him holding an ice pick, and there's very clearly not Billy there.
This tells me that it's not actually these people coming back to haunt them, but it's their own
guilt.
Their own guilt that's haunting
It's
them.
their own guilt is overcoming their better sensibilities.
Kiefer is really losing it at this point. He is being watched over by Oliver Pratt and Baldwin just to make sure he's okay. And he takes him through his hometown to this grave, which happens to be Billy Mahoney's grave. And he fills them in on the entire story.
So basically, Sutherland, or Kiefer, has been bullying this child while he was a young child, and the bullying had gotten extreme to the point where he chased him up a tree and was throwing rocks at him, just laughing like crazy.
Yep.
And the kid's screaming for help. Don't do this, stop, please, please. Kiefer just keeps laughing and throwing rocks at him to the point where he knocks him out of the tree and the kid falls and dies. So Kiefer, being so obsessed with stopping these horrible visions, decides to do something completely drastic. And what he does is he decides that he's going to put himself under and confront Billy alone. And he calls Julia Roberts and says, hey, listen, I'm so sorry for what I've put you through. And he's already starting to open up more to the other group. Mm-hmm. He's being less enclosed, saying, oh, this is fine, or oh, I'm sorry I lied, or whatever. But he's being genuine. And so he tells Julia Roberts, whatever happens, I'm sorry. And he rushes off to go kill himself. And Julia Roberts is clearly worried about him and notifies the other teammates, and they all kind of rush in to try and save what's left of Kiefer, having been under. And he's under a long time.
He really goes deep into the afterlife.
Yep.
He experiences what happened to Billy Mahoney.
But from Billy's angle.
Mm-hmm.
Kiefer is the one being chased, and he climbs up the tree, and he's saying, please don't do this. I'm sorry what I did. And Billy just doesn't give a shit. He starts laughing just like Kiefer did, throwing rocks at him, and he falls and dies in the dream. And
in the real world,
they're
convinced, most of them at least, are convinced that he's been dead too long. There's no bringing him back.
And they try. I mean, they try.
Bacon's
and they can't bring him back.
Punching him in the chest, like trying to get his heart started. Mm-hmm. And
which is funny because Bacon, up to this point, has been the one to resuscitate people. Mm-hmm. So I think we can all agree that bacon is actually really good for your heart. Anyway, so Bacon is clearly frustrated. I can't bring this guy back. He doesn't deserve to die. We figured out what's happening. It's not fair that he should die just as we figured out the solution to this problem. And then, BAM! He brings him back. Last minute. It's great.
He said it wasn't such a good day to die.
So I appreciate this movie quite a bit. It's one that I've watched several times.
I think this was my first Kevin Bacon movie. I don't really know the actor other than the name as I don't know, like an online joke or meme or something. But it was pretty good. I don't think I'd ever watch it again. Overall, none of the characters are really admirable. There's nothing really to like about anyone in the film.
They're pretty much all assholes. I mean, the thing that makes you want to watch this movie is more of the concept, the idea of is there an afterlife, and then the idea of dealing with guilt.
Yep.
Which is really the most powerful subject in this movie.
Coming to terms with things that you've done.
Whether it be your fault or it not be your fault.
And I feel like they could have used that concept in a completely different scenario. It didn't have to be the life or death thing. It seemed to work well alongside the concept of what is the afterlife. The acting was also very dry for me. None of the characters really stood out as amazing actors. The plot wasn't great. It was well written, but not amazing. Overall, oh my gosh, it was a flatline movie. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It just kind of did this the whole time. Maybe that's what they were going for. So having just watched this film, getting all the impressions of the actors and what they brought to the table, what do you think this fine beer brings to the proverbial table? Our barrel.
Well, let me give it a little swig and...
A swiggy town.
So bloody. It doesn't have a blood taste, and it doesn't quite have that rain flavor. Maybe a little bit on the rain flavor. It's definitely got a slick mouthfeel. It's not like astringent at all. It's only a 5% beer.
Yeah, it's not super dry. It's not super sweet. It's very middle of the line.
It's not quite a day beer, but it's you know.
It's got a good citrus flavor. It's not often you see blood orange in a beer, so I always like to try this when I can find it. It's a tasty brew. Gets the job done and does it well.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching. We'll hope to see you again. And yeah, don't die out there.